YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. If it wasn't bad enough, some of the stories that have already come out from the very obviously fake NASA Artemis space mission. Of course, we saw the stories about the toilet being jammed, the $30 million toilet that wouldn't flush, NASA's space plumber, all things I've already covered. It's a comical because they rub these things in your face, including the April Fool's Day launch decision to send the ship up on April Fool's Day, of course, the greatest April Fool's hoax of them all being played on the people who actually believe it. But NASA now, we have a bunch of things that you need to see that have come out from this launch that show you that this is a green screen, fictional operation. We'll start from the beginning of the launch to all the stuff that they're showing us in the mainstream media on the news, where they're airing clips from NASA, obviously interacting with down here on Earth, us Earthlings, as they're supposedly up in space. And they're telling us that this is the farthest human space flight ever done. And of course, that's the farthest human green screen is what they're actually referencing. Maybe they're further away than normal with their green screen operation. But even the mainstream media, like the New York Post, is covering some of the green screen stuff that has come out. Because remember, folks, as I mentioned, they will not pretend to put people on the moon yet because they're afraid of exactly what's happening right now with people coming out and pointing out all these glitches in what they're showing us on the news and showing us from their live feeds, where you could clearly see lettering pop up on objects that they're holding, which shows you that it's a green screen. This is a test run to see how the people respond. If people are going to dissect their every move, which they already expected, but if they can actually get caught over and over and over again with people actually questioning the validity of this fake space launch, and that's, again, why they're not putting people on the moon, because it'll be so easy to see with shadows and other things that they won't be able to obviously program into the AI that could end up glitching on them. So they're doing this test run, telling us that they're getting further than possible, and then they're putting out articles about pure green screen BS, but of course trying to debunk it and say that people are editing the video footage and it's not actually what occurred, but it's legitimately what occurred. Let's start with what they showed us on NASA's own feed from the actual space launch. And I want you to pay close attention on the left side as the rocket, supposed rocket balloon, takes off, and watch this little thing that pops out of the side of the launch, the launch gear that the rocket is supposedly attached to, the loading center where the supposed astronauts get on board. Take a look. This is from NASA directly.
10, 9, 8, 7, RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's...
So if you didn't notice, something shot out, okay, on the side there. This is where they go up in the hatch and then they walk across and everybody waves and they supposedly get on board. Well, pay close attention. Here's a clip that shows you that, they hit the eject button. clearly what you see here, you have 4 supposed astronauts and you have 4 pods that shoot out the side. And of course, how convenient on a zip line that these things go flying down. It looks like no different than you would see at an amusement park, right? Where people ride on the sky rail, or, what we see at ski resorts where they zip line up, up the mountain with their skis on and get dropped off them. Same thing. You can see them going right down all the way to the end, landing perfectly, right? And then from there, as we see with all these bogus space launches, particularly with SpaceX over the last couple of years, where they flat out show you their rocket launches going and veering to the side. Remember, they're supposed to be going to space, so it's supposed to be a straight line going up. Oh, are they going to tell us because the Earth rotates and that's why the rocket goes sideways? It makes zero sense, the science that they try to tell us. But watch this from the launch. You can clearly see that this thing is not going up in the air. In fact, it's starting to go sideways and then eventually, as they always do, into the ocean. In this case, when it flies out of Florida, specifically into the Bermuda Triangle. But watch. We're supposed to believe that this is going straight up, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, on TV, they'll pull back and they'll try to make it look like it's going straight into the sky. And if anybody tries to debunk this, they start to bring in physics about how the Earth is spinning and it's going sideways because it's going, it's going to go up at some point, right? We're supposed to believe it's going to make a hard, sharp dive down and then return upward, right? Now, it's clearly bogus, just like all the stuff with SpaceX, the rocket launches, where we see them going directly sideways. And somehow these suckers actually believe these things are going into space. Pretty incredible, right? These rockets obviously do not leave the Earth, whether they fly them out of California into the Pacific Ocean or they fly them out of NASA into the Bermuda Triangle, or in some cases even flying them into Area 51. The entire operation is a hoax, whether it's NASA or SpaceX. Now let's get into some of the juicy stuff with the green screen, because this is always the funniest stuff, and it's incredible to try to see people out there debunk this. But here, watch closely. You'll see this little doll that they have. You'll see suddenly lettering appearing on the doll, which is clearly a green screen glitch. It couldn't be more in our faces.
Did you see that? And I'm wondering,
what's up with the lettering behind this ball?
How are they doing with you so far from home?
Like, what? Wait for it.
I overheard from some of the conferences, and then what I enjoyed watching
what
with my
this?
family. I think there's a lot going on. It's been interesting to hear.
Right? I mean, there's no real debunking of that. Of course, they'll try to tell you that, people online edited the actual real feed footage, and then they did that. No, what really occurred is that was the live feed footage. And then what they do is they go back in their archives, and then they fix any of the green screen glitches to say, look, go back. You can see in our archive, we have the live feed in our NASA site. Oh, there's no glitch on here, right? Because they cleaned it up. And then try to tell you that we're the ones who are responsible for messing around with it after the fact, but they have the actual footage and it doesn't show up. But it's all bogus. Just like this is a perfect example. This red dot. Okay, pay attention to this bag that's floating around that has a red dot on it because it disappears suddenly. And pay close attention to the bag as it gets near the supposed Freemason astronaut. As the bag is supposedly floating around, watch his eye morph and how his eye is touched by the bag and it pulls on his eye. You can see the morphing of his eye. You can see that this is green screen just by the way that his skin and his eye kind of go in and out and disappear. But take a look at this from NASA's live feed and keep a close eye on that red dot.
Shrimp cocktail. And this has been rehydrated already, so we added water to it, and the shrimp soaked back up the water, and it's actually pretty tasty. This is an example of a food that has not been rehydrated yet. It got all dried out for flying up here in space, and those are green beans. So we do have to eat our vegetables even in space, but don't worry, they do give us mac and cheese.
So it's a miracle. The red dot disappeared, right? I'm sure there's an excuse for that as well. Maybe there's an excuse for this. Now, this is a clip of the female astronaut, again, with the doll that we saw the lettering on a few minutes ago. Watch the shadows. Pay attention to the shadows. As her hands are going over her knee to hold this little, plushy toy, you'll see shadows on her leg or his leg, right? And watch as the hands pull back. And we're supposed to believe this thing isn't floating on a string. Watch how there's suddenly no shadow because it wasn't even on a string. It was just green screen in. There's no shadow on the leg. So hands on this plush doll, shadows on the leg, hands away, no shadow. So the plush doll isn't even giving a shadow. It's a miracle. Right? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then we get this thing with Nutella. If you haven't seen this, it's pretty hilarious because remember, according to their science that they tell us, right? This goes back to, their Newton's law of universal gravitation. They talk about how the only way that objects can move in space is unless they're acted on by another force, which would mean that one of the astronauts would have to throw this Nutella can, whatever it is, this Nutella bottle at somebody else on the spaceship. I mean, it almost looks like it's an advertisement for Nutella. And remember, we know this is the American corporation that we're living in. So clearly this was an advertisement for Nutella. But again, the science here, folks, objects aren't supposed to be floating around like that unless somebody's throwing it to another person, right? So pushing it to another person. So who's throwing this? Because you could see the astronauts right here. Who's the one throwing it at the supposed astronauts? So again, the Nutella thing just floating by. It really looks like just advertising for Nutella, who of course I'm part of the American corporation. I mean, this is just one big giant scam that we live in here in America. That's what they call the American experiment. So the science changes, right? Because again, you're supposed to, things float around in space, but they have to be acted on by another force, according to Newton and all the bullcrap that they spew to us. But remember, folks, just like with vaccines, remember the days, I keep mentioning this recently, But it's worth noting. Remember the days you got a shot, right? You're supposed to be immune. So if you got the flu shot, you're supposed to be immune from the flu. You had all these people get sick because they're actually getting injected with the flu, right? You go back to polio. Oh, you get the polio. You don't have to worry about ever getting polio or the measles, right? Oh, well, suddenly with COVID, when they told everyone to get vaccinated, then they never have to wear a mask again, et cetera, et cetera. Well, suddenly you're vaccinated, you're not immune because the people around you don't have the vaccine. So they're the enemy. So you have to try to guilt them into going and getting it or not allowing them to live in your house or be your friend anymore unless they go and get it because they could make you sick. So they change the science as they go, of course, because a vaccine by definition is supposed to make you immune. But remember, just like Newton's law here, they own the science. They've told us this many times at the World Economic Forum. They own the science because they make it up.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. We own the science and we think that the world, you know, should know it.
So they own the science. So all the stuff with shadows, all the stuff with the green screen, look, they own the science. They own the gravity science. If it doesn't, if something they're showing you doesn't match what they once told you about gravity, well, they'll just give you a different reason for it. That's what they're doing right now. A lot of these articles are coming out debunking anyone who's picking apart this bogus mission. But we don't even need to pick it apart because we can just go back to Buzz, right? Buzz Aldrin told us himself, as I showed in multiple videos over the years, letting us know that what everybody saw with the initial moon landing was actually an animation and just their voices were being heard, right? And you can even see the clip at the end that I'll show you where George Bush is being rolled in to NASA headquarters, and you could see the green screen in the background where the guy is literally in front of a green screen doing exactly what they ended up showing you in real time on the ISS feed.
Very clearly, I think anybody who was alive at the time does. I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon.
No, you didn't.
What?
Because there wasn't any television. There wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation. So you associated what you saw with...
I have very hazy memories.
I know.
Well, what we saw was we all were gathered around the old curve-top radio and listened.
Talking about, you know, how many feet we were going to the left and right, and then I said, contact light, engine stop.
It's exciting.
A few other things, and then Neil said, Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. Man, how about that?
That was very exciting.
Not a bad line.
Yeah.
Gravity goes away. They must have found a pocket.
Yeah, gravity goes away and he fell.
Yeah.
Or he got caught up in that harness he's wearing. Here comes the Wallace Senior.
Yeah.
In the background.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
And it's obviously
Here's an arrow.
A guy filming with a green tennis ball in front of a blue screen.
Right. Clearly, I mean, it's not even...
And then here's a clip of what they turned it
Here's
into.
his water particle. Yep.
So NASA, again, means to deceive, right? This is a Freemason operation. Buzz Aldrin, all these guys are Freemasons, the 666, the ring. They show you all this stuff. All these guys who supposedly go to the moon are all Freemasons, right? Just like when they showed us the Supreme Council 33, flag, cloak, whatever they want to call it, that they brought supposedly to the moon that, again, had the Baphomet sigil on it. It is a Freemasonic operation. That's why you even see on the shuttle the black and white checkerboards, right? You see the little black and white squares, right, connected. Where's that? What does that remind you? Oh, the Freemasonic floor, right? The duality, as above, so below, right? We see the celebrities doing it all the time, wearing the checkerboard outfit. They even have it on the NASA ship because they reveal themselves to all of us as people don't want to believe this. In fact, they even showed us a little bit of the same old that we saw with the bogus Blue Origin launch, right? Here's one of the picture of one of the astronauts getting food put in his arm. Look at the guy doing the putting the food in, right? Look at his hand. Get a close up on his hand. What does that look like to you? Right on his hand. Well, that's Baal. There he is, right? That's Baal, who they actually worship, and that's why one of the guys working for NASA has Baal tattooed. And if you actually get a close up, you can actually see his sigils on his finger. You could see it from multiple photos of his hands. There's sigils. Those are satanic, occult sigils that are on his fingers, right? Baal, right on his hand. That is not just a random bull, okay? This guy isn't going to Spain and running with the bulls. It's Baal that is on his hand. And we saw the same thing, again, with Katy Perry and the fake Blue Origin launch, which is one of the fakest things we've ever seen, which could be why they pivoted back to NASA when we saw the door opening. Anyone remember that? The door opened from the inside. The supposed capsule landed, and Jeff Bezos, the DARPA clown, ran over to open it, right? He had a little lever that was going to pop it open. They had to pretend to pry it open, but accidentally one of the fake females inside, who probably really has a schlong, pushed the door open.
But it's this moment that's caught the attention of conspiracy theorists. The hatch opening from the inside, minutes before Bezos uses a tool to open it. Here's the audio.
You didn't really close it again.
The argument online is that a pressure-proof hatch shouldn't be able to open so easily from the inside.
All right? And remember the outfits that they wore? Right? If you flipped it upside down, this is what you get. You see the Baphomet right there? Right? That image, even on the patch that they wore, looked nothing like the Blue Origin ship, because the Blue Origin ship actually looked like a phallus, a penis, which again is another thing that they worship, right? That's what the obelisk that we see represents. It's a phallus. It's the male shaft, so to speak. Okay? That's what you see with all of these obelisks that are erected, no pun intended, all around the earth, including in Washington, D.C., the one that happens to be called the Washington Monument, which is, again, 666 inches wide. Remember that when you're converting, because most people out there go, no, I looked it up. It's not the same. Okay, they've changed this over the years because of people like myself who have exposed it and ended up with a large following on platforms like YouTube. 555.5 feet is what they've always told us was the height of the Washington Monument. And then they would tell us feet wide would be 55.5 feet wide, which equals 666 inches. They've changed the science. They've tried to scrub it off the internet, but there's screenshots, as you can see, that clearly show this being told over and over and over again. Hey, this is the size, this is the dimensions, until, of course, people on the internet figured out, that the obelisk was actually Egyptian in origin, and this goes back to Baal worship and phallus worship, and it actually represents the male penis, right? So, nonetheless, we can see that on the Blue Origin rocket that it was a phallus, but on their logo, they gave you the Baphomet. Doesn't even look like the same exact ship because, again, this is a Baal production. That's who they worship. That's why you saw the NASA astronaut getting the food put into his sleeve by a guy who had it tattooed right on his hand. So many things to look at. You got the ejection, right? That thing on a zip line coming right out at the launch and nobody asking any questions about it, right? Just like you're on a ride at Six Flags or Disney or wherever people go for roller coasters these days and amusement parks, like you're on a zip line. Or same as going up, coming down from a mountain and you're at a ski lodge. Same thing, right? Even had a little landing area where they all landed safely. Then you see the trajectory of the supposed ship just going not straight, veering off to the right, and then going down into the ocean, just like we see with SpaceX all the time. Again, the wording on the plush doll showing up, showing you that it's a green screen, the red dot disappearing, being there, and then disappearing as it rotates very clearly. Green screen, the shadows that appear and then don't appear when the hands are taken away, showing you that the plush doll isn't even on a string. It's just a green screen being used. The Nutella advertisement, questioning science by floating by, meaning somebody threw it at somebody, right? Somebody just took it and threw it. And supposedly there's only how many astronauts on board? You tell me one of the other guys from the side just decided he was going to peg it at somebody's head randomly, right? I mean, you're kidding me, right? Right. But remember, folks, they own the science. This is as fake as it gets. It gets faker every time. The question is, do they have the balls? And we know a lot of these NASA female astronauts do have the balls. But does NASA themselves have the balls in the future to actually pretend to put people on the moon? This is a trial run to see how much is going to get debunked. How much are we going to mess up on our end? Are they going to point out every little thing? Are they going to notice this? Are they going to notice that? Can the AI actually keep up with what we're trying to do here? Well, we see clearly that it can't, but we'll see if they have the balls to pretend to put people on the moon in the future, because they know before they fake Mars and they use Devon Island up in Greenland, again, once we acquire Greenland, which is part of the operation, as I've covered many times over the years, Once they decide, they cannot pretend to put people on Mars unless they do a fictional walking on the moon again. They know this because people have been questioning, which is why they're doing this. How are we going to go to Mars if we haven't been back to the moon since 69 or whatever year it was, 68, 69, supposedly, right? People are asking that question. So they're going, well, we're going to test it. We got to be careful, though. We can't let people walk. Oh, so 60 years later, they can't walk on the moon when they did 60 years prior, and they supposedly left doggy bags with their feces and stuff on the moon and played golf and did all this other crap that they claim on the moon. What a joke, right? Oh, well, we have to be protective. We're a weakened society. We have to protect. There's a female and a black person on board, so we have to be really careful. We don't want them to get hurt on the moon or anything like that. Oh, okay. Right, test run. But trying to brag, we are the furthest we've ever went. Oh, absolutely, totally. Yeah, furthest you ever went. I'm sure. Maybe it's the furthest you've ever went with a PSYOP. That's about it. But it's certainly not the furthest you've ever went because you never went anywhere in the first place. Maybe it was further down Van Nuys Drive in California or wherever they filmed these. It was the furthest outside of Hollywood that you've ever filmed the green screening of the moon. Maybe that's what they meant, right? I mean, it really is another joke. But will they? Because they're going to have to attempt to put people on the moon one time before they actually attempt and fake putting people on Mars. So this is a trial run that you're seeing in front of you. That's all that it is. How much fakery do people see? How many people online? Because remember, everything online is data mining, right? All this stuff in the internet, they're watching and reading everything you write, whether it's questioning, COVID, whether, again, they saw how many people question COVID. Why do you think COVID got pulled back, right? No more COVID all of a sudden. Not talking about COVID and variants. And they told us it was never going to go away, even though we have some really stupid people who are still going and getting boosters, which is just sick. You should be put in a padded room if you are. But you don't hear anything about it, right? They've pivoted. They've gone away from that. What do we see? Well, we see things like Ozempic, where the government's trying to give it to you for, we're going to make it really cheap. Oh, well, everybody cares about how they look. We have a narcissistic society. So look, everyone's fat because we're putting all this crap in their food. Go get Ozempic. Go shoot it into your arm. All right, none of those people who question the vaccine are questioning what's in the Ozempic, right? Right, they pivoted away because they saw the response. They pivoted from COVID. Then we see other people, we see this being administered in different ways now, getting vaccines inside of people with things like fat, this fat, appetite curb stuff that's getting injected. So my point being is with the data, they're watching what people say. So how many people online are questioning? Are people fighting online? Are people defending what they're seeing? And of course you have the suckers who will constantly defend what they see that's given to them from the mainstream media because they don't want to believe that they've been lied to their entire lives because they're weak and they can't accept it. Part of the awakening process is tough. You got to accept you've been lied to your whole life. For me, it was pretty easy. There were some things that were shocking along the way, like I talked about with McMartin, preschool, and a lot of the pedophilia stuff. Like it blows your mind when you first wake up and you realize that you're living in a massive, network of child sex traffickers who are all these people presented to us as celebrities, movie stars, musicians, and politicians, right? All famous people. Because the majority of people will be like, they can't all be, No, they are. They are, and they're all put in those positions because they know that you would never believe it and you'd find it too hard to believe, and then you'll find people who defend them, right? Just like we see with MAGA. You can tell them all this stuff with Epstein Island, which is being fed to you by the CIA. Oh my goodness, all this stuff with Epstein. We got to get all these pedos. And then you get 9,000 photos of Trump with them, and they go, oh no, but he's not one of them. Oh, because you like him. That's why, right? You don't really care about the kids, clearly, because you're defending people who would probably are the most guilty, right? Like guys like Trump, who are at least seen in the most of the photos, but he gets a pass because he's Republican, right? The Republican actors get a pass. It's only the ones that you want to pick, right? So you really care about the kids, or is this more of a Republican-Democrat team type of thing? Well, of course, that's what their motive and what they care about most is. They want to see Democrats arrested, thrown in jail, and the elimination of the Democratic Party. They don't really care about actually saving and rescuing the children, because if they did, then they would be turning and selling out on Donald Trump and saying, we're not supporting this anymore. We're not supporting these guys anymore. They pretended to be, like us, and they're not. They're all in on it together. They're all pedos together. No, they don't, right? They don't. So, long story short, we'll see how they respond. I'm rambling here to the ridiculousness that they're putting out. And, of course, they're going to be watching what everybody says so they could try to see whether or not they should actually attempt to try to put people on the moon. But guess what? They're going to have to do it if they want to pretend they're going to Mars, too. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.